Hi, everybody. Today we are going to be starting Unit 2, which is the Biological Psychology unit. And like I said, it might have been difficult to apply some of those psychological perspectives like cognitive perspective, biological perspective, behavioral perspective, all that stuff. Um, but I mentioned that we are going to have units on all of those things. So now we're going to be talking about biological perspective as a whole unit. So you'll leave feeling way more able to apply the biological perspective in explaining our behavior. So this unit's really fun. If you like hands-on learning, this is the unit for you. Some of the big questions that we answer, just like we talked about with the biological perspective, we're looking at how structures and parts of the brain chemicals, neurotransmitters, hormones, etc., our genes, how those impact our behavior and functioning. Looking at how the brain communicates with our body is what we're mainly going to be focusing on today. So today we're looking at the nervous system and all the breakdowns and kind of parts that fall within the nervous system. A good one for our content maps and kind of breaking those down. And then we're going to be looking at the neuron, which is the building block of our nervous system, and all the parts of that. So let's get to it. So we know that the brain is what kind of controls everything going on in our body, whether it's thinking or kind of telling our body what to do, such as moving your arms and legs and whatever. Brain's the head honcho. So we're going to focus today on how we actually, our brain communicates with the rest of our body and how our body communicates with our brain. And this is through the nervous system and the endocrine system. These are the two systems that kind of are communicating throughout from our brain to our body to help regulate us, our thinking, our movements, all that good stuff. Um, Endocrine system, we're going to focus on a little bit later. There's not too much we need to know. With that one, we really focus in on the nervous system. So we'll give you the basics of the endocrine system, but mainly talk about nervous system. So the nervous system, right? It's made up of nerves and neurons, which is the way that our body communicates. So there's two parts of the nervous system. There's the central nervous system and then the peripheral nervous system. We're going to look at more divisions within the peripheral nervous system, but the central nervous system just consists of our brain and spinal cord. So you can see kind of my key here. It's all the green, brain and spinal cord. And then the peripheral nervous system is kind of everything jutting out beyond our spinal cord. So this is picking up all the stuff around our environment because it's going on all the way through our arms, our legs, to our toes, our fingers, all that stuff. So kind of taking what's sent from the brain to the spinal cord and then communicating that out to the rest of the body and the world. So central nervous system, you can remember that it is central to your body. So it is controlling everything from just, like I said, communicating what's going on in our brain to the rest of our body. But also because it's central nervous system, right? It's central to us surviving. So it helps control like central things to our life, such as breathing, heart rate, etc. Now, peripheral nervous system, like I said, consists of everything outside this brain and spinal cord. So we're going to break these down into more divisions. So like we see here, central nervous system, just kind of all you have to know is brain and spinal cord. But then peripheral system has a variety of subdivisions within there that we need to know and understand what they do for our body. So now we're going to break down into peripheral nervous system. So first divisions within the peripheral nervous system, like we see here, are automatic and somatic nervous systems. So soma, a good word to know, like the root of, it means body. So somatic nervous system controls our voluntary muscles, meaning if something's voluntary, you have to put actual thought into moving those. So if you're going to swing a bat, if you're doing even fine motor movements like typing or texting or whatever, walking, all of those things are controlled by the somatic nervous system. They're voluntary movements. Autonomic nervous system controls involuntary muscles. So think of things that you are going on in your body that you don't actually control. or have to think about doing, right? So breathing, your heart beating, all that stuff, right? These kind of involuntary things. Um, that's what's going on here. So if you, for example, boo, I scared you, um, that would be something that's controlled by the autonomic nervous system, right? So if I scared you, which I probably didn't, your heart rate would increase, your breathing would increase, you might start sweating and you can't help that, right? That's all autonomic. But you deciding to go for a walk or pick up a water bottle, right? That is your somatic because it's you're moving your body. So again, think soma, body, you move it. Autonomic, think it's automatic, you don't actually control it. So now we're going to look at the divisions within the autonomic and the somatic nervous system. So let's start with the autonomic nervous system and those divisions, which consist of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. All right. So we have the sympathetic. Well, before I get into the autonomic nervous system is our fight or flight nervous system. So just like I said, when I scare you, what happens? Your heart rate increases. You might sweat. You might start breathing heavily, right? So this is your fight or flight. It's kind of what you do when you're put. This is evolutionary psychology, right? What you do when you're put in this kind of scary situation and how your body has been trained to react. So sympathetic, you can think it arouses or activates the fight or flight mode. So this is what's going to increase your heart rate, increase your breathing rate, make you sweat, dilate your pupils, and make you ready to engage in that fight or flight mode. So I think of it as the gas pedal. So it's your arousal, your activation, your gas pedal. Now, parasympathetic is the opposite. Parasympathetic is the division that once the danger has subsided and it's all good, the bear has run away. So this is what's going to calm you down. It's going to decrease your heart rate, bring your breathing back to normal, return digestion to normal, your blood circulation, all that stuff. So you kind of think it's rest and digest because when your sympathetic nervous system's activated, it actually kind of stops digestion. So your blood flow can go to other parts of the body that are more necessary to help you run away or fight back in this situation. So parasympathetic, rest and digest, decreases heart rate, calms you down. And right, it's the break in this scenario. How I differentiate between these two, I remember parasympathetic as a parachute slowly going down, right? Parachute slowly bringing you back to the ground and calming you down. So, right, if you just remember that parasympathetic is your parachute, you're calming down one, then you just know that sympathetic by default is the fight or flight arousal one, right? So, FRQ tip and trick. If they ever ask you something about applying the sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system in a problem, you need to be specific and talking about like what the different body parts are doing during this like time period of fight or flight. So if they say, the scenario is that you're at Six Flags, Great America, and you're going on roller coasters, whatever, apply the sympathetic nervous system to this scenario. AP is looking that you are able to name at least one thing that your body is doing when your sympathetic nervous system is activated. So if you aren't being specific and saying like what is going on with your body, which they call physiological arousal, so like your body's reaction, not your mind, but the body, the actual things that are going on. If you can't name that, then they won't give you the point. So as long as you can say something like heart rate increase, which we see here, breathing increase, pupils dilated, digestion slows down, you're sweating. If you can say any of these things when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, then you're good to go. And same thing, if they ask you to apply parasympathetic nervous system, just do the same thing, right? So you can mention, okay, they got off the roller coaster, his heartbeat slowed down. They got off the roller coaster. Their digestion started back up again, and now they're hungry for some Dippin' Dots, right? So there you have it. Okay, so now let's move on to the somatic nervous system. So again, this is your voluntary one. And we're going to look at the two divisions within there. So I mentioned that neurons are kind of the communicators that are floating around your body, communicating messages throughout your nervous system. So there's two divisions within the somatic nervous system, which is again the one that you control and think about. So there are afferent or sensory neurons, which I think of these as access neurons, because you are taking in information from your senses in the world and then bringing that up to your brain. So these neurons are picking up. So if I touch the screen or I touch a hot plate or something, right, it's picking that information up, bringing it in and up to my brain to be processed. So I think of it as access because you're accessing the world and bringing it in. And then sensory because it's like, right, you're using your senses to bring it in. Those are the two names for that. So it's bringing inward. Afferent or motor neurons is the other name. These do the opposite. So if I decide I'm going to throw a ball or type on my computer or go for a walk, all of those are voluntary, and that requires afferent motor neurons. So I have in my brain, I want to do these things, and my brain now needs to communicate through the peripheral nervous system, right, to all the relevant limbs and parts of my body that, okay, you need to move your arms, you need to move your legs, you need to move your fingers, whatever. So the way I remember that efferent is going from brain to the body, I think of it as efferent exit, right? It's going from your brain and exiting, and you're doing, typing, doing whatever you need to do in your body. Or motor, because I think like movement, right? It's your brain telling your body to move and be in motor. So that's outward. So again, little concept map here. These are your divisions you can remember. And trying to come up with those little, easy tips and tricks of, right, parasympathetic is parachute calming you down, access, exit, afferent, right? All those things help you, right? Autonomic, automatic, helpful stuff. So here's some examples of something I said, right? So Leah is chased by a scary growling dog that escaped its owner's truck. This is a real situation. Nikki ran out of the car, saved her. So describe the bodily sensations that Leah would experience, which nervous system is activated. Okay, now Leah's safe in the car. What's going to happen? What nervous system division is going to take charge? So we know that one, this means that the sympathetic is going to be activated because it's your fight or flight one. Your heart rate's going to increase, yada, yada. Once you're safe and can calm down, right, your parasympathetic is going to calm you down, your breathing's going to decrease, all that jazz. All right. So like I said, the important kind of key thing and how we get the information from our brain to our body or our body to our brain is through these little dudes named neurons. So we have approximately 100 billion or so or more neurons firing off 5 to 50 messages per second. So these things are everywhere, right? Because think of all the things that are going on in our body that we don't even think about, right? These are constantly firing and shooting off and sending messages to all the different things we're doing. So neurons are just your little messengers, right? Think of them as the little carrier pigeons sending things throughout your body. So we've got a bajillions of these guys going on. So we're going to talk today about just the different parts of the neuron, because we do need to know what they do and be able to label the neuron, and to be able to kind of describe how a message is sent through the neuron in what order. So just to talk about in terms of neurons, we have two different types of brain cells. So we've got glia cells, which you can think of as glue, And these aren't your messengers, they're just there providing structural support for neurons, and kind of keeping everything clean and in place. So, kind of just like the glue that's keeping everything together and helping these messages be sent, but they're not actually the ones going out throughout your brain being sent. They're just kind of there providing the structure and the glue to make sure things are good. What we're talking about today are neurons, which are the actual carrier pigeons that are going on throughout your brain sending messages. So they're taking in, sending them, taking out from your brain, sending them out to your body, your little messenger cells. So again, definition officially here is specialized cells to receive, process, and transmit information to other cells. I think of neurons as almost like a domino effect because there's so many, right? We said there's over 100 billion of these at one point in time in your body. So I think of them kind of as a domino effect in that you have just a message that, so say you want to swing a bat, right? That message is going from your brain to your relevant parts of your peripheral nervous system. And in doing so, it's going to just kind of domino effect. Like that's just how I think of it in my mind of like neuron to neuron to neuron to neuron, right? They're just like kind of like a game of telephone almost, just sending this message. So neurons are what actually make up nerves. So bundles of neurons combine together to make a nerve. So like I said, there's three types of neurons. We already discussed sensory and motor neurons, and then inner neurons are just the helpers between the nerve cells that kind of help process sensory and motor info. So now we're going to get into, like I said, we're going to label the neuron and identify each of the parts and what they do. So we're going to go in order from like a message being received and then going through a neuron and then being sent off to the next neuron. So in chronological order, we have a message, and that message is going to be received by the dendrites. Now I think of dendrites as just like your fingers reaching out. I'm like the Neil Diamond song, reaching out. They're picking up a message. So, and you can see they look like little fingers that are picking up messages. So starts in the dendrites, and then these are just branches designed to receive communications from other cells. So they're just there to pick up with their little fingers, their branches, the message. Now they enter into the actual neuron and they go through the soma or cell body. Soma, like I said, is another word for body. So soma or cell body is the same thing. And then you have to go through the cell body, and then this enters the nucleus. And if you know from bio, nucleus is kind of the genetic hub of the cell that contains the DNA. So now it gets through there. And this is where a really important thing to note is. It goes through here and we end up in the axon. The axon is where all the magic happens. So we're going to talk tomorrow about kind of the chemical reactions and like all the things that are actually going on in the axon to allow for this message to be shot out and sent to the next neuron. So we'll get into more of the sciencey stuff of that tomorrow. But the axon is where the magic happens. So this, you can think of the axon as just a long kind of tube that carries the message and brings it, it's like a bridge that brings it from the cell body up to the terminal branch. But there's something really important that goes on in here. So even though it is just this tube that's kind of bringing it from one place to another, there's some really important stuff that happens in here too. We're going to discuss tomorrow. So the axon, you can see here, it's actually this like orangey part that's the skinnier thing within these kind of bigger globby things. So the globby things here are the myelin sheath, and this is the protective covering over the axon. So the axon more is just this skinny thing inside, and then myelin sheath are these little globs that cover and protect the axon because of all the important things that are going on in there. So right here, myelin sheath, official definition, fatty substance produced by those glial cells, those glue, right, the protectors, that helps insulate the axon. And this, the purpose of this is it helps to keep it going fast and protect it. Without the myelin sheath, the message might get damaged, or it might slow down and won't be able to be sent as speedily. And we need these things, happening rapidly. A really important thing to know is that um, without the myelin sheath, if you have damage to it, that's when MS, multiple sclerosis, so a really kind of painful physical disorder, happens. Multiple sclerosis kind of causes you, because the myelin sheath is deteriorated, it's not allowing you to send messages as fast. So it kind of makes your body difficult to move around because you aren't able to send these messages as fast since the myelin sheath is deteriorated. So you can think myelin sheath, MS. Easy kind of way to remember that. Okay, so now we've made it through the axon, the important part, and now we go to the terminal branch. So this is kind of this part right here, this branch. And then in the terminal branch, its job is just to kind of tell the terminal buttons, which are these little dudes at the end, to say, hey, the message is here. You got to get ready to release these neurotransmitters to help us get on over to the next neuron to keep sending this message. So now the terminal buttons, like I said, are really important because these contain neurotransmitters. And neurotransmitters are just tiny little messengers. I think of them as crossing guards. They are little chemical messengers that are kept in the terminal buttons, and they help the message cross the synaptic gap, or the synapse, and then make their way to the next neuron to keep sending on the message onward and onward to where it goes. So neurotransmitters, just think little crossing guards that are kept in these terminal buttons. So you really need to know that terminal buttons contain neurotransmitters to help carry the message across the synapse to send it on to the next neuron. So like I said, now we've made it through all the parts of the neuron, but in between, so like I said, you can think of neurons as almost like a domino effect in that they're like lined up right next to each other. So let's go back to like our domino picture. But you see the dominoes, they're like really, really close to each other, but there's a teeny tiny gap that exists between them. So we need our crossing guards, the neurotransmitters, to help the message cross this tiny little gap, which is called the synapse. So you got to cross this tiny gap before you get to the dendrites of the next neuron and keep sending the message on. Okay, so that is the overview of all that's going on in the neuron, right? So it's a rinse and repeat process that, it's going to get to the next neuron, it crosses the synapse, gets to the next neuron, dendrites pick it up, whole process starts over again, and it does this, as the whole message is getting sent. A good term to note, and you're going to see in a game we're doing why I have a picture of a sheep there. It's not for no reason. Good term to note, though, is that long-term potentiation. And this is the idea that neurons can strengthen connections between one another, and that the more times a message is sent between these neuron pathways, so again, think of it like the domino effect of like you're sending a message and it goes through neuron, like a game of telephone. So the more this happens, the more you're sending down a message through the same kind of neural pathway, the stronger it gets, and the faster and more efficiently you're able to send this message. So that's just kind of the idea, long-term potentiation. It's kind of like the neural basis for learning, right? Like the more you do something, the better you remember it. And this is kind of the same idea. Like the message can get sent faster and faster and more efficiently and stronger because you've, sent it so many times. So now I'd like to thank my high school psychology teacher for teaching me this dance. But you can't leave my AP Psych class without learning the neuron dance. So this is going to help you remember it. We've got dendrites. So you're going to take your left hand, go dendrites, reaching out, grabbing the message. And then for nucleus, you can think it contains all your fancy genetic material, your DNA. So you go nucleus, noggin, and then body roll for the soma, because it's a cell body. And then axon, right? It's like the branch, the bridge. You're going to stick your right arm out. And then terminal branch. So then you can go like this. and then terminal buttons, terminal branch, you make a fist, then terminal buttons, you're going to shake that fist, and then snap for when it has to cross the synapse to get to the next neuron. So that's your easy way to remember it. And there you have it. Congratulations. So tomorrow we're going to focus on what happens in the axon and kind of the important kind of electrochemical type things that are happening in order to allow this message to keep getting sent on. So that's what's going on next.